Welcome to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast for couples who struggle with infertility and want to fulfill their dreams of becoming parents. In this podcast, you'll learn actionable strategies to deal with infertility from Dr. Michael Chapman, or Prof as he's affectionately known. Prof is the co-founder of IVF Australia and is a leading Australian infertility specialist who has helped over 3,000 couples realise their dreams of becoming parents. To access previous episodes packed with ideas, solutions and tips that actually work, head over to Dr. Chapman's IVF podcast on iTunes. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.
That first cry of a baby born after the long journey of IVF remains one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. As an obstetrician and an IVF specialist, I've had the privilege of experiencing this over many thousands of times in my long career, but I still remain moved by each baby's first cry. It signifies the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new life. This is Professor Michael Chapman, co-founder of IVF Australia and host of the IVF Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in. To access all the previous episodes, head over to my website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu. You'll also be able to find the various services that we provide at IVF Australia. Today, there was an interesting study published in the peak journal of infertility called Human Reproduction Update. It's got the highest impact factor of any journal in women's health. And that study was a meta-analysis. In other words, it looked at multiple studies from the last 40 years, looking at sperm quality. And what that study showed was that semen analysis has revealed a 50% drop in the concentration of sperm in the male. Now that sounds very dramatic, and it obviously does suggest that there should be a rising incidence of male infertility. Personally, I'm not totally convinced. I don't think I'm seeing more men with problems than I did when I started practice 35 years ago. But there probably is some truth in the story. People have pondered as to why it might be. People have looked at current factors that might interfere with sperm production. We know that various lifestyle issues do have a negative effect on sperm count. The first of these, and there's an epidemic of it, is obesity. As men get over a BMI of 35, semen quality does decline, both in numbers, the shape of them, and their capacity to swim. And that's certainly a modern day phenomenon. Smoking. There's good evidence that smoking reduces semen quality. How many cigarettes make a difference is very debatable, but general advice should be for men to avoid smoking. The oxidative stress that smoking can impose upon the production line in the testicle is well recognised. So smoking is an issue. But in Western society, smoking seems to be on the decline. So is that a factor? Alcohol. Alcohol intake has been implicated in reduced sperm counts. But the evidence from a Danish study looking at conscripts into the Danish army, where they got a semen analysis and then a detailed history of drug and alcohol abuse, suggested it was really once you got to almost a bottle of wine a day on a regular basis that you saw a real decline in semen quality. So alcohol in moderation probably isn't a major factor. What's moderation? Well, it's certainly less than what I drink, but it's probably 1 or 2 glasses of wine or a glass of beer 3 or 4 times a week is acceptable. So ladies, don't punish your husbands for having any alcohol at all. Marijuana. Again, that same Danish study showed that use of marijuana more than once a week impacted on sperm numbers. For those who use marijuana as a recreational drug, once a week is not much. So in that regard, I certainly would ban its use if you're trying to get pregnant. Out there in the environment, there have also been identified toxins in the environment that potentially could interfere with the processes of sperm production. CFCs, those chemicals used in refrigerators, in aerosols, potentially in the laboratory anyway, have been shown to impair cell development and increase the risk of cell breakdown. They block endocrine stimulation and therefore have an impact on production. There is good evidence that over the last 50 years that those environmental toxins have increased, and so they become a target for blame in relation to reduced semen quality. But increasingly there is a theory that the production line for sperm can be impaired from the time the testis is formed. So we're now talking about the early days of pregnancy in the mother's womb. And increasingly we're of the view that mother exposed to the toxins in the environment may be transmitting those through the placenta to the male fetus and set up the child for long-term reduced sperm quality, reduced production. That area is being explored quite extensively, but epidemiologically there does seem to be some evidence of this. So what's the implication of a 50% reduction of semen quality, assuming it's true? Well, as it was pointed out to me today by a radio interviewer asking me questions about this particular issue, we only need one sperm to produce a baby. What are we worried about? Because there are still millions of sperm. So an average count of sperm concentration is around 60 million per mil. 60 million sperm in every mil of ejaculate. Now, if we halve that to 30 million, does that impair fertility? Well, the answer is no. 30 million is still more than adequate to produce a pregnancy rate comparable to 60 million. However, those numbers are the average. If you start with a count of 30 million and you reduce that to 15 million, then you're right on the borders of infertility. More importantly, probably in the 70s, 10% of the population had counts around 20 million or below. Halve that, and you're definitely pushing men into being less fertile. So it is important, at least for a percentage of the male population. Can we do anything about it? Well, obviously techniques today enable pregnancies to occur even in the presence of only a few sperm, because we really do, in a laboratory, only need one sperm to fertilize an egg. We don't need the millions because we're putting them directly into the egg. So we can get round it through IVF. But at a population level, I think we do need to be aware of the toxins. We do need to be aware of the lifestyle things that reduce sperm quality, things we can do something about. Whether in another 40 or 50 years semen quality halve again is a concern. But I think we're now aware of the problem and we'll be looking for ways to avoid the issue into the future. So, an interesting article. It is what's called a meta-analysis, so it's multiple studies, and that can be selective because articles in journals tend to be chosen to be published because they show a positive result. So there could be studies out there which didn't show a change in semen quality over time, and journals didn't publish them because they weren't particularly sexy, didn't sell the journals. I think there still is a little concern that this is an overstatement of the situation. But whatever, we should be concerned. And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast which helps couples negotiate their way through the IVF journey, all the way to parenthood. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.